Hello, Packers fans, and welcome to PackersNews.com and today's Facebook Live as the Seattle Seahawks get ready. As the Green Bay Packers. I got ahead of myself. Get ready for the Seattle Seahawks this coming Sunday. I know we started a few minutes early, so we're going to give you a little bit of time to get your questions in. I'm joined by Pete Dougherty today. Pete, tell everyone hello.
Hi, everybody. And, the Seahawks are getting ready to play the Packers, so there was nothing wrong in what you said there.
Thank you for that. Of course, Pete, big news of today and a little bit yesterday as well is that OBJ or Odell Beckham Jr. is now officially a free agent. He can sign wherever he wants, and it's been known that the receiver has a lot of interest in the Green Bay Packers. Receiver Devontae Adams talked about it today as well and had mentioned that he's even talked to OBJ a lot recently and has let him know, hey, there's a home for you here in Green Bay if you want to be here. What just initial thoughts? What would OBJ add to this team?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this when I first saw the possibility, to talk about it last week. I'm like, I wouldn't touch this guy if I were the Packers. It just seems like a problem waiting to happen, and especially at that salary, but nobody was going to take on that salary anyway, $7 million or whatever he had left. Mm-hmm. But if he really wants to play for the Packers, if he really wants to play with Aaron Rodgers and he'll sign for basically the minimum or something really close to that, then yeah, I would seriously entertain bringing him in. This is one where I would definitely consult Rodgers and see if he's on board with it. And if he is, and OBJ really wants to play here, then that would give you reason to think that he would come in and do what was asked without creating any issues and be fine with, whether he gets a couple catches or 8, So if all those things are the case, then yeah, I would seriously look. He's a talented guy. I just don't know whether is he really willing to finish the season out playing at the minimum with somebody, maybe because he's still getting paid his entire contract from Cleveland
right
now. So, and maybe the other offers he's getting aren't that good financially. And if he would come here, one of the attractions would be playing with a great quarterback. Mm-hmm. And if he plays really well, that would make him more attractive to other teams when he would be a free agent in the offseason.
A couple of logistics in reference to his salary, because I know that was a huge deal when he first went on the market or when it was first became known that he wanted out of Cleveland. The question was who can afford his salary. It was a $7.25 million left that he had to be owed off of his contract. It's like a 15 point something million left on his contract, but he was guaranteed 7.25. There were only a couple of teams in the league that could take that on with their salary cap. However, he negotiated with the Browns. $3 million of that was converted into a bonus, so that saved them some money. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I went through and I read the details, but I'm a reporter, not a lawyer, so there's only so much I could understand. Now that he has cleared waivers, a team is not beholden to that $7.25 million. That's the duty of the Browns, which will now be $4.25. Correct?
That's right.
Our Tom Silverstein reported this morning that the Packers were offering him the veteran minimum, so they would not have to be paying him that 7.25. It could fit within their salary cap by paying him the veteran minimum. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, that sounds that is exactly correct. And so that's what he's doing is his agent's negotiating with I'm sure multiple teams, and maybe some are willing to pay him more than that. Maybe some are willing to do a contract beyond this season. I have no idea what's going on with those negotiations, but if he is willing to go to the Packers for the minimum, I mean, look, if the Packers don't like the way things are going, 3 weeks from now, they could just turn around and cut him, and it would only cost them, 3 weeks of salary. They wouldn't be on the hook for anything else. So the risk would diminish a lot. But again, it would depend on how much he really wants to come here, and if Aaron Rodgers really wants him here, then if both of those are yes, then yeah, I'd seriously entertain it. I could see why they did make him the offer they made. I mean, I have a little trouble seeing him sign with anybody for the minimum, but maybe he thinks that would be the best long-term thing for his career is to come in and playing with a good quarterback. His chances of putting up good numbers improve with a great quarterback. His chances for putting up good numbers improve. And So maybe he'd find that and a chase for a ring attractive.
Yeah, I mean, he's an older guy now. If he wants to be with a contender, you have to wonder if it's worth it to just, like you said, take the minimum. This is a good point to this question, Mike. We've already kind of discussed his feelings on it. But a team that really doesn't have a number 2 wide receiver, they do have a number 1. They have one of the best number 1s in the entire league. OBJ, I would argue, and you can add your opinion, is no longer a number 1 wide receiver. He should have been. That's what he thought he would be coming out of college. It's what he was supposed to be with the Giants. That did not necessarily pan out. He was not that number 1 guy with Cleveland. He could come here and sort of take that backseat role and provide depth to Davante Adams and maybe a second downfield threat. Would you agree?
Yeah, I don't think he hasn't done anything in the last, I've got to go back and look, but I would say at least 3 seasons to suggest that he still is a number 1. I mean, he hasn't done anything to suggest that. So yeah, I think you're right on the money there. And he's still, you got to think he's still a talented guy. I'm sure the Packers have looked at the film. He would come in and be you would still think he'd be their second most talented guy. Now, Valdez-Scantling has a big role in this offense, not necessarily in putting up, big catch numbers because he doesn't have a ton of catches and he's been out, but it's his long speed that stretches defenses that really affects the offense. So they do have him as their number 2, but Beckham could be, I'm sure he could be a slot receiver, and you'd still have to think he would be their second most talented guy. That would be your best guess if he were to come here. But, like we talked about, it's got to be, it just can't be that they've got a really good chemistry going, a really good thing going. So they don't want to disrupt that. And so they'd have to feel really good that he would just come in and fit in and be happy with, whatever they asked him to do and whatever numbers and targets and all that he ended up getting.
And that's never really been his style from what we've seen of Odell Beckham Jr. He's not necessarily a backseat sort of guy, just here to do my job. That's not necessarily him, but again, to your point, if he's wanting a ring more than anything, that might be what he has to do. One more quick note on OBJ, and then we can look at some of the other questions we've gotten. You mentioned specifically a couple of times if Aaron Rodgers is okay with it. We have seen in the offseason that this was the year Aaron Rodgers sort of wanted to put together. He even referenced it with Randall Cobb as the last dance with Michael Jordan and Pippen. He has seen Tom Brady be able to do that, to pull the guys he wants and put together the team he wants in Tampa Bay. Do you think that those two personalities could get along together? From your experience covering Aaron Rodgers, would he want OBJ here?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That is a really good question. It makes me think of a little tangent here, and you have no way to know about this, but in '96 when the Packers won the Super Bowl, they had some injuries at receiver and tight end, and Andre Rison, who was a really good receiver, but also had these same issues Beckham has had in a lot, just being disruptive for his team. Cleveland cut him, and it was right after the Packers had been hit with all these injuries, and they brought him in. And he had a big touchdown catch in the Super Bowl and helped them, for the last half of the season some. And so I'm sure a lot of Packers fans out there see a parallel with this guy, with Rison and Beckham. And, I think there's something to it because Rison was a volatile personality, and he came in and he just avoided the media and didn't make any news. He made no news during his, 8 weeks or whatever it was here. So even though Beckham has this big personality, if the Packers background check, they can check with people around the league that they know, and maybe they think he could fit it in. I don't know, what Rodgers would think. I would think he would be intrigued by the talent, but he knows about chemistry too. The thing is, if he, like with some personnel things, to make these quarterbacks happy, I'd go to them and say, what do you think of this move? But then no matter what they said, if I was a GM, I'd do what I want, But with something like this, if Rodgers says, yeah, and he's really behind it, then he's invested in it. So he's going to go out of his way to try to make it work. I think that matters a lot in an instance with a receiver like this.
And Davante Adams sort of gave his notch of approval to it today and said, he had talked to him a lot and he wants him here. So we'll see what becomes of it. According to reports from his agent, this could take a couple of days. He officially cleared waivers at 4 p.m. yesterday. He wasn't signed right away. It might be tomorrow, Friday, before we know where he's landing. So just last question, I promise, on OBJ, then we move on. If he's here by Saturday, do you see him playing Sunday?
Probably not. I wouldn't think. That's just not enough time, especially because if Rodgers is the quarterback, they will have had 0 reps together. We saw it with Von Miller, right? What day did he get traded last week? He didn't. I was watching part of that Rams game, and he was in street clothes on the sidelines. So, and that'd be an easier position to plug somebody in. Mm-hmm. So I would think that this week is out. That'd be my best guess.
Okay. Someone else that is in question, I guess, still technically for this week. Rick asked the question on everyone's mind: will A-Rod be able to play Sunday? From your understanding, what would have to go into it to make that happen?
Well, I think you know this stuff better than I did. I've been wrapped up in doing some other stuff, and I know you wrote one of the stories last night, and Tom Silverstein had a good column about about whether Rodgers should play and some of the protocols he has to go through. So you tell me if this is right.
I actually have it, or go ahead.
Yeah, because I think I was under the impression he had to test negative twice, at least 24 hours apart, but it sounds like once they hit the 10-day thing, as long as he's not symptomatic and a local doctor passes him, then he can rejoin the team. Is that right?
Yes, I was under the same impression you were, that it was really just dependent on a negative test. Our Tom Silverstein did break it down for us. He said he doesn't need to pass a COVID test to return to the facility. He just has to show no symptoms and not have had a fever for at least 24 hours and be cleared by an independent doctor. The return is approved by the club physician after consultation with the ICS, which is the infection control services. And if he doesn't have to be approved by the chief medical officer, if he makes it to at least the 10 days, and that would be Saturday. And so if he makes it to at least Saturday, he can just be approved by the ICS in consultation with a local or an independent physician, show no symptoms, and have had a fever for 24 hours. He was on the Pat McAfee show yesterday and said that he was feeling much better. A couple people pointed out he had some sniffles. It's also that time of year, what factors into what there is the question. But if he says he's feeling better and he has no fever, then, we could very well see him on Sunday. Matt LaFleur did say that if he's in the building, he's the starting quarterback on Sunday. How important will he be now that you've seen Jordan Love play and that Russell Wilson is going to be on the other sideline on Sunday?
Yeah, and I wonder how Wilson's going to be. He's got a finger injury, so that could actually affect, how he throws the ball. Mm-hmm. Tom Silverstein, who you referenced, he wrote a good column today about that he would play Love. He'd want to give Rodgers, because, with COVID, there are after effects with that. Just give Rodgers another few days or week of recovery time. I'm of the opinion, it's really valid. It's a valid take on it, and there are probably some teams that would do that. I'm of the opinion if the guy feels pretty good, put him out there. Their chances of winning with him, even not being 100%, are significantly better than they would be winning with Love. They're fighting for the number 1 seeding. As long as you feel like there's no long-term risk to Rodgers playing, then I'd put him out there.
Speaking of fighting for the number 1 seeding, I thought Devontae Adams had a great quote today. He said, I feel like this is a divisional game with how much we play these guys now. And he went through all the postseason times that they have faced him since he's been here. Then he said something that I thought was a little strange, but you've been on this beat a lot longer than I have. So I'm going to ask you, because of how often they play them now and how important those games are, he compared this budding rivalry to Bears-Packers.
Oh, that's a bridge too far. Packers Bears goes so far. The history, if you know the history of it, it just goes way too far back. Too much has happened. It's just not the same. There is a real rivalry there, and they were two of the best teams in the NFC for a pretty long stretch there. Now, Seattle's taken a little bit of a dip. I mean, maybe they make the playoffs this year, maybe not, but I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. It sure doesn't look like it right now anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a bridge too far. But this game will matter. It's not a division game, so for tiebreakers, it won't help with the division. But the division is no issue. It's an NFC game, and a lot of these tiebreakers can go down to who has the better record in the NFC.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a big game for tiebreakers that way. Besides being, you got to keep notching them in the W column.
Mm-hmm. Levi asked, Kenny Clark updates in Stokes. I actually know this one. I can take this one if you would like. Was out at practice today. Kenny Clark was there and practicing. Eric Stokes was inside during the stretching, but he was not outside with the DBs during the open viewing period, like those drills. He was not out there. That's not to say he wouldn't join them later, but during the first few periods and some light drills, Eric Stokes was not there. But he was in the facility at some point and at least stretching, so he could have joined them later. Another question that's going to get asked a lot about is Bakhtiari. I believe he's supposed to be cleared today. Is that the understanding you were under as well, Pete?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. They had like a 21-day window, and I think today is the last day for that. Now that's just whether to put him on the roster. They could put him on the roster and not play him this week and still wait a week or two. If I had to bet, I'd bet they play him this week, but I certainly don't know that as a fact.
Okay. He was out there practicing again today, was moving well, was teaching some of the younger guys some different moves as well. That's actually all in our practice footage, which you can watch now on PackersNews.com. Head there. Well, don't go there right now. Finish with us. Finish with Pete and I here. And then after that, head to PackersNews.com and you can see that practice footage. This is a really good question. DK or Lockett, who do they focus on trying to stop? Who do you put your number one corner on?
That is a good question. Maybe they just won't travel. Maybe they see him as enough of equal threats where they'll just, whichever side they line up on, that's who covers them. Metcalf Lockett's really good. I'm not suggesting he's not, but Metcalf is the guy who would scare me the more of those two. Mm-hmm. So I would have the defense more oriented towards keeping him from beating me than Lockett if I'm the Packers.
Okay. And I've seen this one in the comments a couple of times, so I'm going to bring it up. Should Blake Bortles now be the backup for Aaron Rodgers after what you've seen from Jordan Love in one game?
Yeah, I would have to say definitely not. We saw Bortles in camp, and he looked okay, but he's got a really strange throwing motion. Actually, it was in the offseason stuff, or maybe it was really early in camp we saw him. But no, Love. He showed in the fourth quarter he can move the team, and you got to see whether could he build off that. So no, I would if for whatever reason Rodgers can't go. It's at least to me it's a no-brainer. It's got to be you got to play Love.
And at this point, that's sort of your ride or die, right? You risked a lot to bring him in and have put a lot of emphasis on him. So if you're not riding with him, then you got bigger problems than Blake Bortles being your backup.
Yeah, and and I'm not, even if he started this week, they would learn more about him, but I don't know that it would be anything even close to definitive. I think Justin Fields, I didn't see his first game, but I think I saw his second game as a starter. I think I watched that game, and it was not pretty at all. And then we saw him against the Packers in week 4. Not real. That was pretty ugly too. But the last 2 games, I think these are like 6 and 7 for him as a starter. He's looked a lot better. Mm-hmm. So even just a handful of starts, can make a difference. So I don't, Love starts 2 games in a row. We'd learn more about him. Maybe some other red flags would pop up, or something that would be a good sign would pop up, but it wouldn't be anything close to definitive. He'd have to play, half a season to even start really getting a good feel for all that stuff.
I do see a few new comments asking about OBJ as well. Guys, I know we started a few minutes early, but if you go back and watch the front part of this video when we're done, you'll see a lengthy discussion on Odell Beckham Jr. Someone also asked, where is Olivia? If you have not heard yet, Olivia got a dream job opportunity back home in Philadelphia to cover the Flyers. That's one of those you don't pass up, especially if that's your home. So I know I have big shoes to fill, but she left me in a really, really good position. So I'm happy to be here and taking on the Packers beat with these guys. It's been a crazy, crazy week. It's felt like a month. But can we please, you know what, before we sign off, this is actually a good one. Can you please advise any improvements on special teams? Matt LaFleur said on Monday it has to be addressed. Pete, how many adjustments can you make within the middle of a game week?
Yeah, well, I mean, you gotta do something. Maybe you gotta start, benching guys and having them worried for their jobs. The thing that would worry me if I were the Packers is it's something different every week. It's coverage one week, it's botching kicks the next week. Then they had to fumble the muff punt and the bad judgment on whether to catch it or not this last week too. So that's what would concern me. But I don't think there's any. I mean, coaching change doesn't do you any good. Mm-hmm. Who are they going to put in there? Their two assistants are, they've only been in the league since 2019 and 2020, and neither one's been a coordinator. We're going to find out in the next couple months, whether Drayton is a keeper or not. Mm-hmm. There's the special teams coach, and whether he can get this turned around. There's just a lot of work to do and a lot of teaching. I mean, there's still 8 games. Look how different the world looks. The Packers world looks, now than it did after week 1 when they got blown off the field, and it looked, there was people going crazy in Packer land, wondering if the whole season was going to be a disaster. So same thing 2 months from now, maybe the special teams landscape will look different, but they have obviously major issues there right now.
Mm-hmm. A couple of people have asked who's to blame for the missed kicks. Is it Crosby, the holder, the snapper, the line? It can be a combination of things, right?
Yeah, it's judging by Crosby's reaction. It sounds like the first one was a matter of it's a combination snapper or holder because they didn't get the laces spun away.
What is it Ace Ventura taught us? Like, laces out, Dan. Laces out, Dan.
Yeah, and it's really specific in the tilt of the ball and all that stuff, and it's down.
There's so much physics that goes into it.
It is, and these snappers, the good ones, they can control the rotation, and a lot of the time they can get it so the laces aren't an issue. So you can put the responsibility on either him or the holder, on the snapper or the holder on that. The other one, it was blocked. I didn't even look at what was going on with the ball, but there was just too much penetration on the second one, and so it was blocked.
Pete, I know you still got a busy week ahead of you. We'll let you get back to it. Everyone, stick with PackersNews.com for wall-to-wall coverage of the possible return of Aaron Rodgers, the possible maybe even signing of OBJ, and if nothing else, the Packers Sunday game against the Seattle Seahawks. Thanks so much for being here today.